Hey, hello guys. Hello. Is it working? Yeah, I think everything is good. I had my webcam bugging on me and it wasn't displaying, but finally I think it's all good. Great. All right. So I hope you guys are all doing well. I got my iced tea. I got my tracks, so I'm ready. Okay. Let me see. Let me see the donations. I need to log in, and we'll get started right away. Okay. So, um, oh, well, someone sent 3 tracks, so we're gonna start with that. Hey, Gabriele. Hey, Luke. What's up, Luke? What it do? What it do? Yes, you have to donate a minimum of 3 euros, and then you need to include the link for your track in the description of the donation. You will have a space to write something, so you just put the direct link in that space, and then send. Okay. So let's start with the track. So we have 3 tracks by Gabriele Solomoni. He sent 3 tracks, so we got Lost in the Voices first. Let's take a listen. Hold on, guys. I'm just gonna close the door because there is some noisy cars outside. Not going to be good. Be right back. All right. Okay, so with this track, you have a mud problem. So the low mids are very muddy. So let me grab an EQ and show you what I mean. Especially in the second part. So the first part is a bit muddy, but it's not as bad as the second part. Let's go large. Okay, like that. So it feels like you're lacking some treble, so the track does feel very rolled off. Like it feels like it's, contained between like 4K and the bass. So like, 50 to 4K. And you're lacking that, that treble that's kind of opening up the sound. So you end up with a track that feels very closed feeling and a bit like a low bitrate MP3 because low bitrate MP3 is naturally roll off. So you want to EQ your sounds to not get such a rolled off kind of dark feeling, because the thing is, dark music, like a dark frequency response, doesn't mean no treble. A dark frequency response is a bit different. It means you might have like less high mids or less, a bit of a dip here, and that's what gives the dark feel. But if the highs are like straight up rolled off, it's not going to be a dark mix, it's going to be a rolled off mix, so that's not what you want. So of course it doesn't really fix it to just boost the highs because they're just not there to begin with. So you want to make sure that you don't cut them in the mix as much. And it feels like there is a bit of a clutter also around 300-400. And yeah, so in the second part, same thing, there is a huge clutter here. And it still feels very rolled off. Even the percussion feels rolled off. Actually, hold on, let me just check that you didn't send a low bitrate MP3, because if it's just that, then I need... No, it's not MP3. Okay, so it's really the mix then. Okay. That's going to be in the brass, so the French horns, the tuba, just whatever brass, look at it around 300-400 and cut a bit. The choir as well, so check the choir. Yeah, it's definitely mostly the brass and choir, it seems. So if you create a dip here overall and just make sure you get more highs on the strings, for example, mostly the strings and brass, so you don't end up with such a rolled off feeling, like it feels like it's rolling off after 4K, then the track will feel more open and balanced, basically. Regarding the percussion, it feels a bit weak right now, but that's mostly because of the mud. So I think once you clear the mud, the percussion will feel at the right volume, because there is just that much mud covering it up. So I wouldn't really boost the percussion now. See how it comes out once you clear the mids. It should come out better. Yeah, Gulf Force to some degree will, but don't abuse Gulf Force. Just try to do some EQing first and then put Gulf Force to polish, you know. Dragonetti, sure, no problem. I do once a month, every second Sunday of the month, so yeah. Yeah, don't use Gulf Force will cut there, but don't just use Gulf Force, and it's too muddy to use Gulf Force. You need to EQ first. Okay, so let's see. This next track is called Jump Scare. Okay, I'm ready to be scared. Well, it's definitely a really cool track. Composition-wise, it's amazing. Like I think it could really work as a trailer, but you need to make the hits a bit harder and a few things. But composition is very cool. So yeah, for a second I thought you're gonna have the Britney Spears song here with the cello. Dun, 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 dun. Is it just me? Yeah, Toxic, I think it's called, the song. So I think it's still a bit muddy here in the intro. So you kind of want to lighten the texture a bit here, like that resonance here. It's fine, but also the bass here is a bit resonant. You could decide to have a bit more low end from the soft hits instead. Just a tiny bit muddy feeling. But nothing too bad. I mean, it's just, you know, intro, it's kind of like pads, so it doesn't matter really if it's a bit muddy. It's more like free in terms of what you can do with the sound here. With that said, you could get a bit more distance, a bit more size out of these sounds, for example. Like the screechy kind of sound. I mean, like the main synth that's kind of gritty. You could put this gritty stuff with bigger reverbs, you know, just to kind of give it more of a distance, because otherwise it feels a bit close. Same for the whoosh here, the little... This, you can just put reverb on that, you know, to make that stuff really feel like it's a huge scary place. So then I have a bit of issues on all these hits. It's mostly noticeable at the end. Well, it's very noticeable at the end, but also noticeable here. All these hits, they are unbalanced tonally. So you get too much mids. And because of that tonal unbalance, you end up with a clacky sound that's not so powerful, which is mostly clacky in the mids. And because of that, it kind of doesn't have the bottom end to really make the track work. So it's too much around 3K. And the low end just isn't that punchy. So you probably want to get more low end out of the hits and just more clickiness. See, just doing that. Of course, it's not gonna work if you just do it on the whole track, but... And get more of the kick, like boost more of the low end in the kick. Whatever low layer you have for the hits. And that will just make the hits, you know, bigger sounding. So rebalancing that. So the main driving drum, like the taikos or whatever it is. The big drums. They're a bit too muddy. Around here. It's just the taikos. Or toms or whatever it is. Cut a bit of mids in these taikos. You see, all these hits, you can feel the high mids are too much. And these Brahms, the main Brahms, are a bit too soft as well, a bit too rolled off, too dark. So around here, it's a little bit muddy. So make sure the Brahms have more of a high end, more of a grittiness. They're less soft and dark. And cut a bit of mid in the Brahms as well. You see, and as you add more stuff at the end, yeah, the Brahms of the second part here. As you go towards the end, you can really hear the hits being unbalanced. So, like, you can't feel the bass anymore. All you feel is just the clack here. Yeah, just whatever is happening. Maybe it's the brass and the Brahms, both of them. But yeah, you need to fix the hits really here. Just this sound in general, of the Brahms, is a bit too soft and not gritty enough, a bit too rolled off and muddy. Yeah. And then we got short and epic. Let's see. So a few problems. The choir is too muddy. Around here. Even down to the low mids here. In fact, maybe just also lower the choir in volume a bit, not just EQ. But it's definitely muddy. Yeah, as it goes higher, it's muddy a bit higher. As the choir stays low, it's happening a bit lower. And then the hits are just way too quiet and they get buried at the end. So overall, the hits are just too quiet. But mostly towards the end, they get buried because the other stuff gets louder, but the hits don't. So the hits have to keep up with the instrumentation. So because most trailer hits is just the same sample, you have to automate your trailer hits with the arrangement to make sure that they stay at the right loudness within the arrangement. So you can hear how they're kind of loud, kind of okay here. And then at the end, see how they're tiny here? It's because you didn't automate them. So, and you have the riser and whatever louder choir is at the end. So the hits need to keep up in terms of volume. And regarding the hits, actually, see right now they're just not like dominating the track enough. For this genre, you need bigger hits. So I think the low mids of the choir definitely are not helping. So once you cut it, the hits will feel more massive in comparison to the muddy choir. Because if you remove some mud, the hits will feel bigger. But even these hits here, I think you have frequency issues. It's always mostly the high mids that are too loud. Like, that's very loud. But the low end of the hits is not very punchy. It's kind of rumbly and kind of flat, you know? Like if you remove this high end, try to feel some punch. There is barely any punch. Even if I boost the low end and I just focus on the low end, like you don't feel a dynamic boost in the bass, right? You don't feel the dynamic punch. So I think that means you don't have the right samples for this. So you need to use a different sample that's bigger and the bass has more of a dynamic punch. And then your hits will be able to cut through not just in the high end, not just in that harsh area, but also cut through the bass by adding some energy punch here. So it's a matter of picking a good sample. So you could filter the sample you currently have and keep it for the highs, maybe cutting a bit of that harsh 6, 7, 8K so it doesn't feel as thin sounding. And at the same time, layer a different sample for the bass that has more of a dynamic punch. So that way you get a bigger feeling hit in terms of dynamics as well. And the brass is the horns. Feels a bit muddy as well. So it's probably not just the choir that needs to be mid-cut. Overall, the track still feels a bit rolled off in the treble, just like the others. But yeah. So yeah, that was it for your tracks. But I think you have some good musical ideas, especially the second track. So that was nice. So okay, so we got a track next by Carlos. Let me download it. Okay. So this track is called Arriving. Okay. I see you guys laughing at the waveform. Guys, a sausage waveform isn't necessarily bad, right? If you have the correct mix, the correct balance and punch, you could totally have a waveform looking like this and sounding still really powerful. So, you never know. But in that case, you're right, it's a bit rumbly. So let's start by the beginning. I have some sausage waveforms. Like most of my masters look like this, Yeah, well, a bit less maybe, but still. So I think the low booms are just a bit too strong, but the mixing of the intro is mostly fine. But the hits, not all of them actually. Let me see. See, for example, this one. The sub is a tad strong. Not too much though, not a lot. This one is fine. This whoosh here. The bass is fine here. It's just, yeah. This one a tiny bit strong. This one maybe as well. You could cut a bit of 40, 50. Just cutting a bit of 40 or 50 hertz, like a couple dB. But for an intro, it's fine to have something boomy and rumbly, like that. But then I would like to say something about the arrangement, because it's a bit of a shame in the intro. the arrangement could really like make the mix better in the situation, because you got a long kind of brass building up here. But the harmony just isn't doing it. You really want to start building chords here. It's very much just a melody line, and you're lacking like some chords. So I would definitely write some brass chords here. So like some low dynamic brass chords just to give some harmony, because it would really add to the mixing. It would really add more color, more harmonics to the sound and make it sound bigger. Because if you just have like one brass line, it's not gonna sound big. So try to like make chords, like triad chords at least, just to make it bigger. And regarding the brass as well, it's a bit muddy here. So the mids need to be a bit cut. Your brass is a bit peaking here. So you want to create chords here and just cut the mids a bit so the brass is more controlled feeling, less boxy feeling. Right about 650. So and then, so yeah, regarding the climax, so as other people said, it's a bit too loud and a bit rumbly. So I think you have too much limiting, and that's probably why it's not as punchy as it could. But that's not all. Clearly, the mix is too muddy, and that's preventing you from really limiting the track correctly. Because if you have some low mids or like some mud actually triggering the limiter, it's going to prevent you from getting a good limiting. Because think about it, you want the hits to be the loudest points, and that's what's going to trigger the limiter mostly. But if you have some mud, then the limiter will struggle, because if the mud is louder than the actual hits, then the track won't sound, as punchy. And here your low mids are almost as loud as your hits, and that's just preventing the limiter from really being triggered correctly. If you look at your limiter, you're probably going to see it's like limiting nonstop. Even when there is no hits, it's randomly peaking like -2 or -3. You're probably seeing something like that. And that's because you have too much low mids and there is a frequency imbalance during this climax, especially around 400. In fact, if I just where is it? Wait, I'm trying to find something. I always have it preloaded, so I don't know where it is anymore. Actually, it's more that I usually have, hold on, I have my plugins usually on my second screen, so like by muscle memory, I can find my okay, I found it already. And like the arrangement of the plugins is different when it's on the bottom window. So just to demonstrate how clearer it could sound by cutting the low mids, I have this plugin which is kind of automatic EQ. So it's basically going to try to detect where the mud is and going to push the track frequency response towards a correct target curve. So if you look at what it's doing here, if I put it on your track, great. It doesn't like being loaded, being drag and dropped. Well, where is it? How come I can find it in my top window but not my bottom window? That's a bit insane. Yeah, because like all the arrangement is messed up. Golfos, where are you, Golfos? Show yourself. God, I give up. Okay, it's under mastering. It's under mastering. Oh, right, it was on the bottom. Of course I couldn't find it. Of course I... Yeah, definitely not sponsored by Golfos, by the way. You see, it's right there. Of course, I didn't look there. Great, I think it's crashing or something, like it's not... Wait, okay, never mind. It's not working, I have no idea why. The point is, you need to cut this range here. And that's mostly going to be in the brass. Yeah, definitely like probably 70% the brass. And it's going to clear your track a lot. Because other than that, the mix is pretty solid. It's just that mud, but like the balance, the overall, you know, it's mostly good. It's just that one huge problem. Like the hits feel fairly powerful. I think they're just being muddied by this brass. Yeah, and the ending is fine. So yeah, the track is too epic for golfers. Like it never crashed on me like that. It's the first time it doesn't move. It's supposed to move. That's weird though. Like, let me see. See, it's working now. Yay! Okay, I can finally play around with golfers. So. As you can see, it's trying to cut these low mids. So that's like the brass mudding up stuff. All right. But the production of the track itself is good. Yeah. So the next donation is from Baguette, someone called Baguette. I think they know that I'm French, most likely. Oh, it's from Dan. Dan. All right, so let's take a listen to this. It's from Dan, yeah. that was a cool track. Okay, so in the intro, so I think there might be a tiny bit too much dynamic range. So you might want to raise the intro. See, just here, some of these sounds are really quiet. It's just probably just a bit too much dynamic range. And the piano is bothering me a little bit regarding resonances. This note here in particular is a bit strong. A bit too resonant. You see, just cut it a bit so it's not as like woo right in your ear. You can even see the peak. You can see how much of a crazy peak this note is. Yeah, you could just automate the master, I guess. Yeah. Also here it's very resonant. It sounds like it's sidechaining something. Are you sidechaining the piano and the cello? Or is it just an artifact? It sounds like the compression, there is some compression going on, I don't know. But the resonance is just overbearing. And then when we go in the next part, it's a bit muddy in the low mids. See, for example, I think that may be the cello. Yeah, some resonances here that you need to sort out. Probably the solo cello a bit. This one here, for example. It needs to be cleaned up a bit. Hits are maybe a tad loud. Overall, all the big hits, just probably a tiny bit too loud for this kind of track. I mean, in a trailer, they would probably lay out a bunch of different hits on top of your work anyway and make it uber loud. But just for like the general presentation of this track, you probably want to lower all the hits, like 1.5 dB maybe. And yeah, just clearing the low mid mods overall. Yeah, right there. Oh wait, I layered the track twice. I was like, what's going on? Yeah, see, the hits feel a little bit too brutal, maybe. Like, once you will clear the mud, I think the hits will feel louder anyway. So it's gonna be fine to lower them a bit. And it feels like it's limiting a bit too much at the outro. It's like turning down the track, it's hitting some compression or limiting too much. and it's messing other elements in the track because of the loudness of the hits. So definitely. But other than that, it's just the frequency response feels a bit weird because most of the stuff sounds nice, but then you got these few low 200, 300, 400 harmonics sometimes, which just make the sound a bit hollow sounding with like a, it sounds very resonant in the low mids, and then it sounds like there is a dip, and then higher than that there is the air. So because of these resonances, it feels like the 1K and 2K is just too low because the 200 hertz is dominating, basically. And that's making like the sustain elements a bit hollow and weird. So yeah. Oh, Carol, what's up? Carol in the chat. Okay. So then we got a track by Me Titan. Okay. Download it. So let's see. Let's do part by part because I feel like this next part is going to be different. So start with this part. So one thing we could mention, it's the yeah. So Patrick is right about the tremolo. So you could make it come in and out a bit more, but regarding the panning, that's what I wanted to mention. I feel like there is a bit of wasted potential with the violin and the horn because it feels like the violin is kind of coming slightly from the left and also the horn as well. So for this intro, I would actually pan the violin a tiny bit more to the left and have the horn on the right here. See, especially here at the end, you feel like it's really like the horn and the violin are coming from the same direction, so it's a bit, a bit too much, everything at the same place. Regarding the small percussion, it feels very dry and close, so I think you could have a bit more depth with this small percussion here. It's a bit hard to get depth from sharp sounds like that, especially close mic'd sounds like that. One thing that can work is first off cutting the high treble, so cutting like that. So, and once, maybe not that much, just cutting the 15, 20K, just a bit like that. And then what you can do is add a bit of reverb, but if you just add some hall reverb, it's not going to sound very good. Yeah, if the 4 mics are missing, then what you can do is put a room, like put some kind of room to really give it a lot of depth. And so, like for example, like just a room, like I don't know, ambience. So very short tail reverb. It's not going to work on the whole track, obviously, but just on this sound. It's a bit hard, and that's probably not the right one. Let me try to find. Well, you could just use like a room, like a 2016 stereo room, just something that gives early reflections to the sound, basically, to kind of simulate the missing room mic that you have, and that's going to put the like the small percussion more in a space and feel a bit, you know, less right in next to your ear, because otherwise it feels weird because you have this orchestra and then you have something right next to your ear. Do you like that? You already got a bit more room. So just on this sound, obviously. So something like that. No mics really in this. Well, you know, and maybe a bit of plate reverb, but first try to put early reflections to simulate a room mic, and that will work well. So the strings feel a little bit honky, so it would be around like 800, 900. So if you cut a bit there, you could get a smoother, nicer sound. Obviously don't overdo it, but it's a little bit like nasal, basically. So, and then yeah, the panning I talked about before, just to spread like the violin and the horn a bit more to the right would be nice. Left and right. So let's check the next part. So I'm still feeling the same issue with the panning here. If you listen to this part here. It feels just kind of narrow, you know, the trumpets could be slightly more to the right. The tambourine shaker, whatever it is, instead of just having one in the center, you could have two different, similar but different shakers part panned, because the track really feels a bit one-dimensional right now and all centered. Regarding the EQ of like the strings and the brass, I'm still noticing the same issue. It's even worse in this part about like the nasalness of the sound. So it must be some EQ you put on the master or just something you put in the strings and brass bus. It's just peaking around these nasal regions. Like the trombone, you could cut the trombone at 1K here. And you need to get like some more low mids and like more lows in the low brass, just to kind of even out, because the brass right now sounds a bit nasal and small, basically. The percussion sounds a tiny bit too muddy, around 200 Hz. Like mostly actually around here. Like 120, you could cut like a dB maybe, just to make it a little bit less muddy. So the main big percussion. Yep. But yeah, the brass needs like some low brass tuba low mids, because right now it feels like very much 1K centered, and yeah. Very boxy, I would say. Same thing with that mid-range. Also, you know what, the percussion could be a little fatter, so I would turn it up maybe a couple dB. 1 or 2 dB, just turn up the percussion on top of clearing the mids. So you would get clearer, more balanced mids, more low mids with the low brass, less of a 1.5K kind of boxy sound, and maybe a bit louder sub bass as well by raising the percussion volume, like the big hits. But actually, you know what, just clearing the percussion volume, maybe just clearing the mids might do it. You know, it might feel better once you add the low brass. And cut the mids, of course, 1.5K. So yeah, but yeah, there is some good ideas in there. It's just the frequency imbalance, which is we say the biggest problem overall recording mixing. Yeah, it's not really low mids here. It's more like you know, nasal frequencies around 1K. So yeah. So then we got oh, that's the last track. Guys, I need you to send more tracks. So what am I gonna do after this one? But we got Jonathan Carrillo with a track. Let's see. Yeah, it was a cool track. So this is a remaster of an old track, apparently. And always, if there is no more tracks, I will show you a trick that I'm going to make a video on, maybe in a week or a few days. But I will show you now. So. Okay, stop right there. Let's talk about the intro first. Actually, I kind of like separating the tracks in different sections. It's kind of nice. So overall, there is some nice sounds. Mostly just two things kind of bother me. So first of all, the level of some of the resonances from the pads, it's a bit high. So this one harmonic is a bit too strong here. then it's that mid-range here. From the pad, of course, not the flute. Just kind of clouding the sound a bit. And then you got this flute instrument here that's a bit too resonant as well. That's just kind of, you know, too much pressure on the ears. So you want to tame that a bit. So that's regarding the resonance peaks. Regarding the other stuff here, the percussion, it's kind of a matter of taste. I kind of like the highs in this context, but it's a little bit too small and like, you know, transient sounding. So maybe what you could do would be a good solution to keep lots of highs, but get a bit of a nicer tone would be to just saturate the highs. So by saturating the highs, you will get a softer transient, bit of a softer transient, still a lot of highs, you know, a lot of crispy percussion, but a tiny bit more controlled. So you could use something like, for example, the Elysia character. Oh, this is too much, but just you can see to kind of destroy the texture of the highs, so it's not as clicky, basically, and a bit more smeared, if that makes sense, while keeping as much highs, but just a bit of a different feel. That's too much, but... See, it's a bit less clicky. I don't know if you can hear on YouTube as well, but it's more like the 15K is a tiny bit too small and clicky sounding. So if you can get that a bit distorted, a bit saturated, so it's a bit less transienty and a bit more smeared, it could add a nice tone to the hits. Of course, you need to do this individually on the hits, but yeah. Try to experiment with saturating the high end. So let's go to the next part now. Yeah, same thing for the highs on this. So, few things. The padding could be a bit wider. The violin is a bit centered. You could have some brass on the right. But that's not the main issue. The main issue is mostly just levels and arrangements. I would say I have to talk about the arrangement for this. I feel like you're just lacking like a strong bass line, something lower and warmer sounding. And it makes the track feel a bit empty and just lacking something important. You have like a weird sub bass, but there is a bit of a hole here. You don't feel like the warmth like from a tuba or something. So in the arrangement, you need something a bit, you need to make your harmony a bit, you know, more balanced, a bit more warm with some lower notes, some fifths, some octaves or whatever, just to kind of create a bit of a more balanced texture and have more low mids overall. The violin here is a little bit too aggressive in the high mids. It's too loud also. It's also level issues, like that violin is very loud. The low instruments, warm instruments are too quiet. So of course it feels like the violin is destroying everything else because it's that loud. And yeah, regarding the dynamics, It's another point. Dynamics, it's too flat. So I mean, the master looks a bit limited or clipped or saturated. So maybe it's also the limiting, but I think it's also the samples. The percussion you're using is just not the right kind of percussion to just be by itself like that. You need some kind of bigger percussion. Because it doesn't feel like it's really heavy, you know? You want a bigger percussion sound with some more warmer, bigger low end to really carry the higher instruments as well. And it feels very much like sticks. So the low strings and brass feel a bit muddy, around 400. Percussion, again, percussion is too light and high and crunchy. I mean, not crunchy, but like, yeah, just not, it's lacking the big drums. You know, that's actually quite a nice percussion track, but that could be your mids and highs layer, you know, and you're kind of lacking the low layer basically in terms of like bass. Actually, that's a really nice writing in terms of percussion here. I would also tame a bit the sticks, actually. Yeah, I would saturate them and tame them a bit on the high treble, to be honest. It's a bit too clicky after all. Yeah. But saturation will help. But yeah, there is some really good ideas there. I think just with a bit better layering, a bit better harmony, and yeah, things we talked about mixing wise, I think it can really be like a interesting track. Okay, so then we got Mathieu Degré. With a track called The King is Back. Let's see. Yeah. You can send tracks. Don't forget to include your direct link in the message. So, cool. So, let's start by the beginning. So, the EQ is a bit extreme on the strings and they feel a bit too close because of that and a bit fake, a bit too synthy sounding. So, it's also the panning. The panning is a little bit too extreme and it makes the strings feel a bit disjointed here. So, left and right. Like unless the orchestration is very, very busy, I wouldn't have a violin, for example, that's that sharp. I would make it a bit darker, so it doesn't feel like it, it doesn't feel as fake. Because if you have a very sharp violin in a very busy orchestration, it's fine, it's better. But if it's just kind of a slow violin, legato violin like that in that context, it just sounds a bit, over the top. So all that high treble, it's probably not as bad on YouTube because YouTube is filtering 16K and above, but you want to reduce a bit the air and also reduce the panning a little bit just to bring them a bit more to the center. So it's a bit less extreme. I think there is like a pad or something that's a bit... There's like a pad or something behind these strings which is mudding the mids a bit. So like whatever mid-range pad you have, make sure you cut it a bit just so it's a bit less noisy. And it feels a bit more tonal and less noisy because there's a bit of a noisy element that's preventing you from really feeling the harmony well. And it feels like the harmony is, a bit buried under that noise. So there is something noisy, you need to lower it. Probably like a synth or something. Here the mid-range is a bit muddy. So yeah, just make more room for the tonal elements. The brass is a little bit boxy, so just a few dB. Probably want to make your brass a bit more scoped. Good trombones, cut the trombones around 1K, cut the tuba around 500, 400. Just reduce some of that clutter right here on the brass. And the percussion is also a bit too weak. And like the muddy mids are kind of overshadowing like the percussion. So first, once you remove the mud, which is mainly in the brass, the percussion should feel a bit more balanced with the track. But you might have to boost the percussion a bit, especially the low hits. But yeah, definitely some 1K-ish problems. Same here. Some woodwinds, muddy woodwinds. Most likely some bassoon is going to be peaking there, so when I cut the bassoon. Also, this part in particular is lacking more low end than the other parts, so that's more an arrangement thing, but the snare is just not enough. So there is some voicing issues with the low woodwinds, but it could still sound nicer if you got the, like, you need to make sure that the bass instruments play the bass line. So, for example, this voicing here is a bit awkward. You know, the bassoon. But yeah, you need to make sure that you have a bit of a heavier percussion here, so it's not as light feeling. And control the mud, which is around 600. It's kind of honky here. So here the choir is a bit noisy, around 3K, I guess. 2.5K. It's a little bit too much, so cut a couple dB there. It's like the formant resonance. So it's like a resonance in the throat that choirs do, especially male choirs. So you end up with this kind of noisy, sharp kind of resonances around 2 or 3K, and that's generally a little bit too much. It depends, but some choirs it's a little bit too much, so you want to control that sound a little bit on the choir. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. It's a little bit too honky, a little bit muddy. Percussion feels a little bit light, but it's better than the previous part. But the percussion still feels a bit light. And the mids feel a bit over-dominated and boxy. But yeah. It feels a bit like you're swimming in the sound and it's not separated because of, you know, this mid-range here. Okay, then we got Sean McEwan. So it's called T5. Let's see what this is. Looks like the dynamic range is going to be quite something. So prepare for the fader to move because I care about your ears, guys. Okay. So first thing right away, I can tell your dynamic range is a bit too big here. You know, you can't have so much dynamic range because otherwise people will really have to turn the volume knob while listening, and that's too much. So you need to make sure that the intro is not so much quieter. You know, that whole part probably like until when something could come up quite a lot, so it's not as small. And even that small part here could come up a bit. Well, let's listen to it before. But oh, sorry, I spoiled the finale. Oh, I shouldn't have skipped. Yeah, you're welcome, Mathieu. You're welcome. But yeah, dynamic range right away. That's way too big. Okay, so definitely the dynamic range, but that's not the only thing. So so this intro part, there is not so much to say. This resonant high piano is a little bit too loud, so you might want to make it really discreet. The high resonance, so lower it by a many dB, so it's more of an accent, less of a strident sound. And then the percussion here. Oops, sorry. I'm turning my volume. I'm turning my volume and adjusting stuff, but you probably can't hear the track at all because now my voice is super loud and I need to set the volume correctly. Hold on. That's probably better. Okay, so the percussion high end has a bit of a weird clickiness to it that you probably don't want for this. It feels a bit like it's distorting or something like that. So if you could get a bit more of a organic sound, a bit less of this high end, it would be nice on the percussion. The brass is a little bit muddy. Around 650. It's probably going to be the trombones, not so much the horns. If you have trombones, or maybe it's the horns, but there is just some honkiness around here. And the percussion is a tiny bit dry. You could put some more plate reverb or something just to give more distance to the percussion. Especially in the final build, you can feel how dry it is, so a bit more ambience around it would be nice. So some plate reverb tends to work well. From 2 to 3 seconds tail tends to work well with percussion. So the low end is a bit loud and insane for this. You want to hold back a little bit, especially during the build up. It's very, very loud. So I would make sure that the hits don't have so much of a big low end. Probably just a few dB less of this. So it feels a little bit more balanced, you know. Hits can be loud, but it's a little bit too woofy compared to what's going on in the track, I would say. The same thing with the brass, still a bit muddy. Also, there is some arrangement problems, some harmony issues. Like the chords of the brass, for example, is just not clear enough. You have some dissonances which are not really helping the track, and that's also participating in the mud, just having that clutter. If you stick to more straight chords like triads, fifth octaves just in the key of the track, and you just have a more clear spaced out harmony with less kind of clashing going on, you're gonna get a better sound and a clearer sound and less clutter in the mids. Yeah, sure. Feel free to send any genre. I mix any genre, so anything is cool. So, the sound down now might be a bit loud. And the high percussion feels a bit narrow. There is a hit here that feels almost mono. or completely mono. So you want to see what's mono and sounds weird. This hit here. Like it's like there is no stereo space to it, which sounds weird. Same the bass a little bit too woofy right here for what's going on. The brass is more an arrangement thing, but it feels like the brass is too light and it's not like the harmony is not heavy enough. You don't have the correct notes in the low end and low mids to really create a nice, heavy, warm bed of brass. So it's all a bit empty sounding with like the super low sub bass at the bottom and then the higher brass, and it's kind of empty in the middle. Like too much unison on that melody, not enough harmony. That's not helping with making the brass feel full. So that's mostly just an arrangement problem. Same here, there is too much clutter because of wrong notes. Not the correct structure. So what you can do, for example, if you make this melody like dun, dun, just take the bass note, take the root, so the bass line, and then take the fifth, and then play the bass above. So, for example, if your melody does like a C, take a tuba, play the low C on the tuba, play the fifth above that, which would be a G, and then the C above. Or try to do like C, G, and then E. So you make like a really wide triad. So, right? For example, C2, G2, E3. Try a chord like that on the brass, right? And see how it sounds like, and you will get a much more solid harmony. And the hits here are just too woofy. It's not punchy enough for this kind of dance arrangement, so that works kind of okay for the quieter parts, but you want a hit that's like less of a, of a low boom and more of a punch, so it really punches through the track, because right now, for the ending, it's a little bit too soft and rounded, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, the contrary motion to the melody, but yeah, I think just making a nice bed of brass harmonically would get for example, yeah, like just a triad chord, it's a good start, but yeah, like it's better to do like just the root, fifth, and then the third above. Don't do the too many octaves also, because then it's too much unison as well. You don't want too much unison. You want the harmony to be balanced. Like you need to feel like the melody is the main thing, but you need to have all these voices, especially below it, to really make it feel thick. Oh, next track is by Music by Caitlin, but the Google Drive link is not a direct link, and I need to ask the permission, so I asked for access. If you do right click and share link, I won't need to ask for access. But I think you just shared the folder. It's a bit different. It's complicated with Google Drive, but because of that, I need to ask for access, so I can't download it right away. So if you can just allow me to download it, I will be able to. You should see an email in your email box. You should see something. Oh, perfect. Perfect. That should work now. Nice. I see it. Good, good, good. Okay. Ah, cool. There is some cool musical ideas in that. It can do a really great battle track. Yeah. So let's start with the beginning. That's fine. Like, not much to say here. It's good. The cello, you could cut a bit the harmonic here. Just a tiny bit. Like the low cello harmonics, I think it's cello harmonics or more like viola harmonics. Probably viola harmonics. Just cut a tiny bit of like 300, like 1.5 dB or something, but it's pretty clean. It's intro. And then so the overall thing here, the loud part, is a bit too muddy. So it's a bit unbalanced between the low mids and the bass, and we are not getting enough power because of that. So if we take a look, the cello is going to be a bit too muddy, around 350. And they're just kind of dominating the sub, so it's making the sub feel unbalanced and too weak in comparison to your low mids. So when I go in the cello and just cut that. You could do a cut like at the 5th here, because it's that harmonic on the cello is a bit, it's coming out a bit too much. And then a cut around 300 to 250, like that. So it's going to clean the cellos a bit, but it's not enough. Cellos. Did I just say cellos? Okay, and and then it's not enough because the bass is a bit lacking. So I think you're lacking like a kind of bigger, punchier percussion sample, because right now you have a bass drum here, but I think you could have like you could have a percussion sample that's hitting like every cello note. So it's kind of hitting with the cello, and it's making the low end feel much bigger. Or actually, the bass drum is hitting more afterwards. But it's still feeling a bit weak because of too much low mids. And the punch feels a bit small, like it's not big enough. It's not big and punchy enough. So again, I think because the low mids are too strong. But I'm not 100% sure that this is the right drum for this. You might want to try with toms instead. Something a bit, that has a bit more punch and smack to it. It would be nice also to get some punch from the drums, mids and highs as well. Like you have some highs kind of stick percussion, but just on the cello, to make the cello hit feel bigger and more epic. So then regarding panning, you can make things a bit wider, so the violin a bit more to the left. It feels a little bit centered. Yeah, the trumpet is fine, it's just the violin a bit more to the left, and a bit more to the left. I think the problem with this percussion is that it's it doesn't have enough character. It's just mostly that subharmonic kind of picking. And other than that, it's kind of, it doesn't have like a lot of character, so it's just like boom boom and that's it. So I would try to experiment with like a different big drum, and you would get a nicer sound with it. So then there was some articulation problems here. So that's more like with the choice of articulations. Yeah, definitely for the percussion, that's it. It's just too much of a sub. It just feels like a sub bump and not enough character above. So, so the brass here feels fake because I think you're not using the right articulation. I think you want to use like a much tighter articulation. Like it feels like right now you're using a sustain and you're stopping the note. So it feels like a weird sustain note that is suddenly stopped artificially. So to play that fast, the players would need to play a staccato. So when I go with like a staccatissimo or spiccato for strings, but for brass it's called staccato, I believe. So just like, you know, something that feels more realistic and doable. Yeah, see, I think that's the wrong articulation on the tuba. That's the issue. It feels better here on the horns, but the tuba feels very, you know, a bit weird. I don't think a tuba player could play that fast, but I'm not a tuba player, so I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's, even staccato, it will be exhausting and barely doable. But I don't know, but I think that's not very realistic. But that's not really the issue. If you put actual staccato samples, it would feel a lot more real anyway, even though it's very difficult to play probably. But yeah. And the tuba is actually a bit muddy here. Around 500, 600, so you also want to scoop it a bit because it's a bit too dark and muddy. So if you could get a bit more of a buzzy kind of brass staccato attack on every of these notes, you know, more like a boom, boom, like it has like a bright attack, you know, like a staccato brass would sound, and a bit less of a slurred, flat, darker sound, you know. That would be great. So a bit more like a trombone staccato. You could try to maybe layer some trombones on top of the tuba, actually. Just tuba and trombones together could be nice. If you have some trombones playing some little things here, but just like on every staccato could be nice. Like on every attack. Then this percussion here on this little part, it's a bit dry. Especially the frame drum or whatever this is. Feel free to just add some more reverb. Plate reverb is good, just to give more of a whole orchestral feel. That way it feels like it's, you know, more part of these big parts here. It's like more part of the song. Yeah, you could boost honestly the treble of the brass a bit more, make the brass a bit buzzier. Yeah, you can make the brass buzzier, so as well. So clearing the low mids and the cello, making the brass buzzier. Trying a different low drum that's a bit less just of a sub bump, has a bit more, you know, character, like see some splash character on each hit. But yeah. Hi Ed. Yeah, it's been going on for a while already, almost 2 hours. Awesome. Well, guys, it seems there is no more tracks to review. So let me see. Yeah. So if anyone wants that track reviewed, feel free to send it now. Otherwise, I'm probably going to end the stream because it's been going on for a while. But if you want to send the track, just let me know now, like for the next few minutes. Otherwise, I will just end it. I'm just going to wait like 3 minutes. Guys, also I have a new mixtape video that's coming. Something I found recently. Hey. Nice. Glad you're here. I've seen you before, Firebird. Yeah, I was saying I found something cool on the strings bass to put on the strings bass. I will make a mixtape video about this. It's like a slap delay thing. Okay, see you. See you, Titan. Yeah. So basically the idea of that thing is that I put a stereo slap delay on the strings bass and it makes the strings feel nicer. No blood of my enemies today. What blood of my enemies? I think it was like a reference from before, but I don't remember the context. Yeah, basically the idea with this mixtape video I will do later, it's like a doubler that I put on the strings bass. I call it like string widener. So the idea is you got just the dry signal here, and then you got a doubler here. So that's just nothing happening here, just going through, passing through. And then you got a doubler, and there is 2 delays. So no detuning, no modulation, just straight up delays. No filtering, right? Just straight up delays. But they're hard pans. So there is one delay to the left and one delay to the right. So I have like a 40 millisecond delay here on the right and a 64.7 on the left. And basically it's just kind of widening the strings nicely. So you just mix it up subtly, like 10%. And it's very important to have the shorter delay on the right because usually in the strings, what's not blending in the stereo field is going to be the high violins. So what this does is that it kind of makes the high violins feel a bit more wide in terms of stereo image because you get that delay, right? That's half pan on the right. So if you put a violin through that, then it feels like the violin is also coming a little bit from the right 40 milliseconds later, right? So it gives like a stereo width, a natural kind of width to the sound. But then you got a 64.7 millisecond delay on the left. But the reason it still makes the violin feel more on the right is because your ear is gonna catch on the shortest delay first. So if you inverted this and you had like the 40 millisecond on the left and the 67 millisecond on the right, it would feel like the violin feel even more on the left because then the shortest delay is going to be the one that your ear hears the first. So if you mix this thing into the strings bass, it will feel like your violins are even more on the left. And that's not what you want because in the strings in general, it's generally the violins that feel the most outside of the sound space. So by putting this subtle delay, it really makes the sound feel a bit wider. Actually, let me see. I'm just gonna grab a. I'm just gonna show you. You will see in the mixtape video later. It's gonna be better explained because I will make a proper thing. But right now, let me see if I can find a string stem and just show you quickly. I can probably find a string stem. Yeah, I found it. Check this out. Oh, wait. Why am I not hearing myself? Okay. Good. Actually, that's the solo violin. I don't want the solo violin. Okay, cool. That will do. So check this out. Just imagine this is the strings bus, right? So I put it on it. And now let's just listen to the wet signal. Actually, we need to listen to the dry with it. Hold on. Okay, so I need to balance it. Of course, this is way too much. I wouldn't make it as noticeable. But see, it's like almost like a stereo enhancer. So if I turn it off, and it makes the sound a bit more smeared, basically, because you have these delays. So it works great if you don't have like a big strings hole. You know, if your sound is kind of small, like a CSS, or it's like a semi-small library, it makes the sound a bit more lush by having these kind of delays. It's a subtle effect, but I think it's nice. Let me just put a reverb. Let's do something a bit more realistic. Let's put a reverb after it. Like this. And let me make the situation more extreme by panning it a bit. So I'm gonna pan this sound. Let's say it sounds a bit disjointed. Right. So now you have this violin a bit panned to the left with some reverb at the end. Okay, now we're gonna hear the effect better. So see how it feels like the room just got a bit bigger? Just try to focus on like the proximity mostly, just like the feeling of proximity. Right? It's not reverb, but it feels like it's a bigger hall, right? If I make it way too much, it's also louder, but right, it feels like a bigger hall. And I think that's nice because you can add reverb and just keep adding reverb. And it will muddy up the articulation of everything. And it won't really, help the track. If the recordings sound like it's in a hole that's too small, just adding more reverb is not like gonna make up for the fact that your hole is too small. But the delay, it's less intrusive, right? So you put it before the reverb, it's less intrusive, and it makes your strings just feel bigger. So of course, if you add too much, it has a bit of a weird artifact, kind of repeating effect, because it's a slap delay. It's a very short delay. So you're gonna get some level of phasing, a bit of weirdness. So you can't really put it that much. Personally, I would go like 20%. It's the kind of effect that you want to put like 20% here. So very quiet, 20% on patcher. So keep in mind, it's I'm using it on patcher, but if you put the delay just as a standalone, just by itself, you could also use it. So you could decide to, you could do it with like edge delay, for example. Actually, could you? Because you need two delays. Basically, all you need is just having 2 delays and being able to pan the delays separately. Honestly, I would just use the Waves Doubler because it's kind of a really convenient plugin. You just take a Waves Doubler. You don't even need to use Patcher. You can just take the Waves Doubler here. So that's going to be your dry signal, right? The direct is your dry signal. Just remove the EQ. And then you got 2 delays here. So that's going to be the level of intensity of the effect. It's going to be the gain here. So you can just put minimum and then we bring them in. And then 2 delays, so 40 milliseconds works well. And then 65.7. I think it was 64 point, it doesn't really matter. But no detuning, so straight up delays, no filtering, no detuning. And it's the same thing if you just raise the level of the voices here. So yeah, it's just a subtle thing, but you know, if you just mix it in slightly on the strings bus, I think it's pretty cool. Well, actually, I need to put the 40 milliseconds on the right because I want. There we go. There we go. It's really extreme. Like right now, it feels like the violin is almost to the other side, right? So you don't want to go this far. Just when I put the delays like minus, I don't know, minus 20 or something like that. So yeah, it's like a dual purpose thing. Like it makes your violin feel less isolated by putting that first kind of delay, has effect delay on the right, which is the opposite side. So it makes your strings bus, it makes your violin less isolated. And at the same time, it's because of the delays, it kind of simulates a bigger space because it kind of creates these early reflections, these extra delays. So it creates the illusion of a slightly bigger hole, which is cool if you want to add something subtle without adding more reverb that would mess up the time definition of your orchestra too much. If you just want to make it bigger without drowning in reverb, just put this. But I just realized I'm terrible at explaining without actually writing a script or something like that. So I should probably make a well-structured video because everything I said in the past 15 minutes can be said in like 2 minutes in a much clearer way. So so that's pretty much it. You will understand probably better once I write a clearer video. Oh, drinking tap water? Yeah, I cannot remember. I don't remember the joke exactly, but I noticed I remember the tap water thing. All right, guys. Well, I guess I'm gonna end the stream now. But yeah, look forward to that video. Forget everything I said because it's probably too messy the way I explained it. But it's gonna be clear in the mixtape video. And yeah, I will see you guys probably next month in my next live stream. So see you, everyone.